The wind howled against the windows of the tiny cabin perched on the edge of the frozen lake, the frost creeping up the glass like an unrelenting shadow. Inside, the room was warm, lit only by the golden glow of the crackling fire in the hearth. Jill sat curled on the old couch, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her hazel eyes, rimmed red from tears, were fixed on the figure pacing in front of her, Todd, the only man she had ever truly loved. But tonight, the lines of his face seemed etched with pain, his shadow long and heavy against the wooden walls. "I can't do this anymore, Jill," Todd said, his voice breaking, though he tried to keep it steady. His back was to her, his broad shoulders rising and falling with every sharp breath. "I can't keep pretending like I'm enough for you. Like, this life is enough for you." Jill's heart splintered at his words. "Enough for me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Todd, you are everything to me. Don't you see that?" He spun around then, his dark green eyes blazing, a mixture of love and frustration swirling within them. "No, Jill, I see you giving up everything for me. I see you letting go of your dreams, your career, your future, and I can't let you do it. Not for me. Not anymore." The room seemed to grow colder despite the fire's warmth. Jill sat up, her hands gripping the edge of the couch. "You think this is what I want? You think I'd rather be anywhere else than here with you?" "You're wrong, Todd. I gave up those things because they didn't matter. You mattered." Todd turned away from her again, running a hand through his thick brown hair. The tension in his body was palpable, as though he was trying to hold himself together, piece by fragile piece. "I saw the letter, Jill," he said quietly, his voice barely audible over the crackle of the fire. Her breath hitched. She knew exactly which letter he meant. The one from the university in Paris. Their offer to bring her back, to restore her career as a world-renowned architect. It had been months since she'd seen it. Since she'd hidden it away in the drawer beneath her sweaters, hoping it would stay forgotten. But Todd must have found it. "I wasn't going to take it," she said quickly, her voice rising in desperation. "I wasn't even going to tell you. Because it doesn't matter." "It does matter," he shouted, the words ripping out of him like a wound torn open. "It matters because it's your dream, Jill. You've talked about designing buildings in Paris since the day I met you. You gave that up to stay here, in this goddamn cabin, in this tiny, frozen town, because of me. And every day I look at you, and I wonder when you're going to wake up and resent me for it." Jill stood then, her hands balled into fists at her sides. "You think I could ever resent you? For giving me something real? For giving me a love that feels like it's worth more than any skyscraper or cathedral I could ever design?" She stepped toward him, her voice trembling with both anger and anguish. "Don't you understand, Todd? I chose this. I chose you." He turned to face her, and the firelight caught the tears glistening in his eyes. "And I'm choosing to let you go." The words hit her like a physical blow, and she stumbled back, shaking her head. "No, no, you don't get to decide this for me. You don't get to push me away just because you think you're not enough." "This isn't about me," he said, his voice softer now, but no less firm. "It's about you, about the life you're meant to have, the world you're meant to see, and I can't be the one holding you back." Jill felt her knees give out, and she sank back onto the couch, her head in her hands. "You're not holding me back," she whispered. "You're the reason I feel alive." Todd knelt in front of her then, his rough hands gently prying hers away from her face. "And you're the reason I want to be better," he said, his voice breaking. "But love isn't supposed to cage you, Jill. It's supposed to set you free. And I can't keep you here, knowing that your heart will always wonder what could have been." She looked into his eyes, searching for some glimmer of doubt, some hint that he didn't mean what he was saying. But all she saw was love, deep, unrelenting, selfless love that tore her apart even as it tried to piece her back together. "Please," she begged, her voice cracking. "Please don't do this." Todd leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers. "I love you, Jill," he whispered. "I love you so much that it hurts, but I can't let my love be the reason you stop chasing your dreams." For a long moment, they stayed like that, their breaths mingling, their tears falling in unison. And then Todd stood, his hands slipping from hers, leaving her cold and empty. He grabbed his coat from the hook by the door, his movements slow, deliberate, as though each step was its own kind of torture. "Todd?" Jill's voice was barely a whisper, her heart shattering with every second that passed. He turned to look at her one last time, his face etched with pain, but also with a quiet resolve. "If it's meant to be," he said softly, "we'll find our way back to each other." And then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a finality that echoed through the small cabin. Jill sat there, staring at the empty space where he had stood, the silence pressing down on her like a weight she couldn't lift. The fire crackled on, its warmth now feeling like a cruel mockery. Jill leaned back against the couch, her eyes drifting to the drawer where the letter from Paris was still hidden. For the first time, she let herself wonder what it would feel like to go back, to design, to create, to live out the dreams she had once thought were everything. But as the night deepened and the stars glittered coldly outside, she knew one thing for certain. No cathedral, no skyline, no city in the world would ever fill the space Todd had left in her heart.